Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Britton's Hangout Hour, episode 79. I'm here today with Joseph Reed's Books. How you doing today, man?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing all right. I can't complain. It's been a pretty quiet week so far. How's your week going?
Good. I mean, this is my first day off, so, the week's going good. It's my weekend right now.
Oh man, so I caught you at a good time then.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
But yeah, you run a YouTube channel called Joseph Reed's Books, where you talk about mostly fantasy. So
Yeah.
are there
Yeah,
other
mostly
genres?
fantasy.
And occasionally biographies, because I saw you did
Yeah.
the Getty Lee biography, which I still need to read. Dang it! I feel like a bad Rush fan having not
It's
read it.
really good, and the audiobook is fantastic. It's narrated by Geddy Lee.
Well, I'll have to check it out. I mean, I always knew that Neil was kind of the writer of the group.
Yeah. Yeah, he talks about that in the book, too. Like, he talks about all the work Neil had done for their songs and everything.
Yeah, I actually read his Ghostwriter book a few years ago, and I quite liked it.
Yeah, I have, I think it's Travel Music or something. It's one of his last books that he wrote. I want to read Ghostwriter as well. I actually picked up my copy of that book at the last Rush concert I went to. It was
Not
back in like
bad.
2004 or something.
Yeah, I got into them right as I was getting out of high school, so around like junior senior year. Actually, when I started driving, I started listening to them. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, like I said in my video, like I've literally been listening to him since before I was born.
Also, I was quite intrigued that they were inspired by fantasy and science fiction. So that was also a interest of mine. At least
Yeah,
in the start, they were. And well, I don't know. If, I'm sure you've listened to Clockwork Angels. Their last album is speculative for sure.
oh yeah. And I think Neil co-wrote a book with Kevin J. Anderson for that album.
Oh yeah, that's right. I read some of that. I didn't finish it all because I'm not really a big Kevin J. Anderson fan. But what I
Yeah,
read
same.
was pretty good though. AKA Kevin J. Anderson probably wrote it, and Neil just kind of was like, okay, this is fine.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure Neil was probably like, "Here's a rough outline," and then do you know the way Kevin J. Anderson writes books?
I do not. I just know he just
He narrates them. He just goes on really long walks and he dictates the entire book, and then he sends it off to like a typist, and they type it up for him, like the audio logs he sends them, and then he goes through and edits it, and that's like his first draft is him narrating the book.
hmm.
Yeah, he has a book called "Becoming a Dictator," and it's like a guide on how to dictate books to audio and write that way.
Huh. I have never heard of that. I just
Yeah,
know he's
it's
written a
super
lot
bizarre, and it
written a
explains
lot
why
of
he's so prolific.
it there's a lot of like I know he just writes a lot of like tie-ins and spin-offs and stuff, which
Oh yeah.
doesn't really interest me all that much.
Yeah, he's talked about that because he said that one of the reasons that he's done that is because people will just hit him up and be like, "We need a book in like a third of the time that it can be written in. Can you do it?" And he's like, "Yeah." So,
So he's like Michael Moorcock then, except it's
yeah.
not all his ideas.
Yeah.
Not bad, not bad. Still don't really care for his style, but nonetheless, not bad, not bad.
Yeah, I'm hard pressed to think of like a book of his that is memorable. I know I've read some of his Star Wars books, and I used to own a bunch of the Dune books he wrote, but I never even opened them, and I just sold them.
I didn't like the first Dune book, so there you go.
Oh yeah, then you most certainly wouldn't like the Kevin J. Anderson ones.
Do you like? Have you read the original Dune?
Oh, I love Dune. I've read the original Dune 3 times, and I've read the rest of them. So I've read the original like trilogy like multiple times, and then but my favorite is God Emperor of Dune, the fourth one. And then I've read the fifth one, and then my brain was melted by the time I tried to get to the sixth one because I had read them. I binged all five like in a row, and then I tried to get to the sixth one, and I'm like, nope, I
Oh
can't do another
jeez,
time
you
jump.
should try to like it's like oh man, then you should try Malazan. I mean, I haven't read
I've read
Malazan.
Malazan. Oh, I've read them all.
Oh, you've read them all. All right. Well, what haven't you read? That should be a good question.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, that's probably a good question because at this point I've been reading fantasy for how long? 26 years. So yeah,
That is kind
that's
of funny, going back to Rush, you do kind of look like a young Geddy Lee a little bit with the just
with the long
you
hair
just
and
have
the
the
big nose.
mustache.
Oh yeah,
It's just the mustache. You just get rid of the mustache and you'd be like it'd be great.
yeah. I was going for the 1978 Neil mustache and long
Oh.
hair. Get up.
Oh yeah, you do kind of that's I forgot about that. And I love the nice Nietzsche stash he had for a while.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I also see you've read the Spear Cuts Through Water. So did you get like harassed by Evie and the crew to read that
I
one?
didn't get harassed. It's just that they were constantly talking about it. I was like, I'm gonna give this book a try, and it was
So
good. I really liked
indirect
it.
harassment. I hear
Yeah,
you. I hear you.
it was the constant proselytizing. It just finally got to me.
Yeah, no, I've been meaning to read that. I'm just kind of like, dude, I'm reading Jonathan Strange, Mr. Norrell right now. So like
Oh,
my
that's a
my
tome. Yeah.
my schedule is freaking packed at the moment. So there you go. You can
Can you
only
hear
read
my
so
cat?
much. Wait,
Can
what
you
you
hear
say?
my cat screaming in the background? No? Okay. I have a very old cat, and when he's looking for someone, he just starts screaming at the top of his lungs and wandering around the
I
house.
do not hear it. So,
Okay, that's good. Then he's just distracting me.
oh, okay. I'm like, I'm sure I would have mentioned something, but yeah, no, I see you've covered some things, like Spear Cuts Through Water.
Yeah,
A lot of my
a lot of
friends and acquaintances like, damn, dude, that's like peak fantasy right there, and I'm all like, have you read Perdido Street Station? Well, some of them have, or American Gods, maybe,
I have read American Gods.
Yeah, I read American Gods. So are you on like the love it or hate it scale or
Oh, I love it. I
oh
love it.
okay.
It's probably one of the best explorations of America ever. Like just getting to just really feel like you're there in all these different places. And I know at the end of the audiobook, Neil talks about it, and he was saying that he really wanted to write like a love letter to America about just the scenery, and so yeah, it really shines through in that book.
Um yeah, no, I mean it's funny. I just recorded my video. I'm going to upload tomorrow as of the recording of this. Which is about some of my favorite books, and I mentioned American Gods, and I'm like, yeah, it's a magical book, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it is. It's been a long time since I read it.
Oh, dude, how do you ever forget it? Like, I read it in
No, I don't.
2019, and I'm like, I haven't forgotten. Well, I've probably forgotten some details, but I haven't like forgotten the experience since I read
Oh
it the
yeah, me
first
either.
time.
Like I can remember where I was when I finished it. I was listening to it at work of all places, and like I know the exact location and day and everything.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know if my memory is that long in terms of like how where I was when I was probably on. I was actually probably in my high school gym because that's
Oh
where
yeah.
I did a lot of reading there because they didn't give a fuck. They were just kind of
Yeah.
like just sit around and do whatever. Like I would read
Yeah.
or take naps, and oh god, that was a great class.
Yeah, that's how all of my senior year was like
They didn't
I'm
do
going to read
shit.
all of the Wheel of Time. That's what I did for my senior year.
It's kind of funny about the Wheel of Time. Like I've never felt the itch to read it. I mean, I'll definitely try it at some point, whenever that'll be.
Yeah.
But like just from what I've heard of it and from what people have said, doesn't sound like it would appeal to me. I could be wrong, but you never know.
Yeah, so the first like three ish feel a lot like, well, especially the first one feel a lot like Lord of the Rings because it's definitely an homage to like that hero's journey, and then
Mm-hmm.
it just turns a corner at the fourth book. And but the problem is you have to get to the fourth book, which is 1,700 pages later. So
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I've heard it's one of those, wait till you get to the second book. And I'm like, well, I don't wanna. Maybe I don't wanna do that. I value
the
my
first book
time.
is the first book is good. I think it has probably the softest ending in the series, but
I've heard the
like
same thing about
it's
Malazan or Malazan or how the hell you pronounce it. Because, like, my
oh yeah.
god, I'm just like, oh, there's this guy who's in, like, a page in book one. Oh, he becomes really important later. I'm like, I don't care about that. Though I
Oh yeah, that
actually am more interested in reading Malazan because it seems more in my wheelhouse. Anyway,
yeah,
I'm going on a
it's
tangent.
yeah. That, that's totally fair. Like I mean with series that big, it's such an investment that it's just hard to dedicate the time to it.
No, I actually talked to AP Canavan, and I'm like, man, I don't know about this Malzahn thing. And he's all like, dude, you know you don't have to read, like, all 10 books in a row. And I'm like, yeah, I know that, but, like, and he's like, you have no excuse, go read it. And I'm like, fine, jerk. No, he's a great guy.
I think I started Gardens of the Moon for a second time because I'd already read the whole series, and it's actually harder to read the second time because you're putting together all these pieces. Like there are things that he's alluding to in the first book that pay off in the 10th book. So
I know.
it's 11,000 pages later that some of the things are paying off.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like, that's not really a problem. Like, look, it's an epic fantasy series. That's gonna happen. But, I could read like American Gods, and he did that in one book. You know, like I could do that.
I have been on a tear of reading short books this year. It's like half of my books that I've read this year have been under 300 pages, and a lot of them it's like, why aren't other books this short? Like I want short, fun books more than I want tomes lately.
Short. I hear you. Yeah, no, I mean, I guess I shouldn't be speaking too much because again, I'm reading Jonathan Strange and Mister Norrell at the moment.
Oh yeah,
Um, though I should say it took a lot of mental prep to read that one because I'm like, oh boy, it's a big boy. You know, it's enjoyable though. So I also
yeah.
read Piranesi, which is like a fraction of this book. So I'm feeling good.
Yeah, I have a copy of why am I blanking?
Piranesi,
Jonathan Strange
Jonathan
and
Strange.
Mr. Norrell. Yeah, I have a copy, and yeah, it's a big book. Every time I look at it, I'm like, I should read that, and then I'm like, that's a real big book.
That's a thick boy right there.
I'm
But
trying to avoid any tomes while I'm finishing like my project for the year. So
wait, what's your project for the year?
I'm reading everything Glenn Cook has ever written.
Oh yeah, that's right. You did the video about the noir one he did, didn't you?
The
Noir
what?
the
Oh,
noir
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
book
The
that he
the
did.
Garrett novels. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're like a noir detective series, and there's 16 of those.
Oh my god.
He's written 52
So
books.
so basically, like, it's the proto Dresden Files from the sounds of it.
Yeah, kind of. Well, so it's a noir detective, but he's in a like traditional fantasy world instead of in like a modern
Oh,
times.
okay.
So it's like taking like a Raymond Chandler character and putting him in a fantasy world. It's really fun. Like especially the first, I mean the first six are all just about perfect, and then the next three I've read, like one's fine, then another one's one of my favorites in the series, and the ninth one I'm on right now is so slow. I'm not. I'm like I've got 10% of it left, and I'm like I want to be done with this one.
Yeah, usually when I hear about Glenn Cook, I usually hear about the Black Company. Either people are squeeing about it on the Malazan. Again, I don't really
Yeah.
give a fuck about what it's called anymore. Um, Groups or people on YouTube being like, "Oh, have you heard of this series?" Like, "Oh man." I just
Oh,
found this. No one's talking about it. I'm like, dude.
I mean, it's only 30 years old now, so I love that series. Like that's probably my favorite fantasy series of all time. Is the
Oh,
Black
Black
Company
Company.
series. Oh yeah.
I still need to read it. I got my fix of military fantasy with like Game of Thrones. Though I guess well, but yeah, no, I've
Black Company is more like it's like the boots on the ground, like you're the guys on the front line kind of thing is what it follows more than like the commanders or lords and anything like that. It reads like I think so. Steven Erickson basically said it reads like Vietnam War fiction on peyote, and he's pretty close.
all right.
I've read a lot of Vietnam like nonfiction and a lot of like war memoirs and stuff, and it definitely has more of a war memoir vibe because it's written in first person, and the narrator is the main character, and he's writing like he's basically writing it down in the like annals of the Black Company, and so you're seeing the story he's telling to like the future generations kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's funny you mentioned that. I have a weird thing about like first person and fantasy. I'm trying to think if there's any first person narratives in fantasy that I like.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But
Then you wouldn't like it because it's all first person.
like I don't know why, but there's like, and I don't hate first person narration. Some of my favorite books, like The Great Gatsby, is a first person narration.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just kind of like, okay. And then I've read stuff like The Black Tongue Thief, which is basically like, um, it's basically like Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, except not as
Oh,
good.
I love Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. So he was like, I really want, and
Well,
it
he
kind of
does.
sucked because I really wanted to like that book, and it was just such a meh experience.
Well, I can sell you on another Glenn Cook series. It's called the Dread Empire series, and it came out he started it before the Black Company series, and it is third person, and it is military fantasy, and it goes some very dark places. It's also very small. The entire series is the size of like three Malazan novels, but it's an entire like 8 or 9 book series.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
So he was doing like that Zelazny, where even more cock, where it's like just like here's 100 something pages. There you go.
yeah. I think the longest one is like 310 pages or something.
Make fantasy novels shorter again. That's the hashtag for today's for today's podcast.
Yeah, well, supposedly that's what's happening. Um, Publishers are like, yeah, we don't want big books. We want short books that people will actually buy. So
Yeah, we
keep
don't
the
want
word
thick
count low.
boys anymore.
Yeah. Well, they said it just costs too much to print. So,
It's always about the money. I hear you. I
yep.
hear you. I hear you. It's just, oh man. But yeah, no. I was reading Black Tongue Thief, and I'm just like, I just I just want to read Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser again.
Yeah, you saying that, I was interested in Black Tongue Thief, but if it's just like Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, I'll just read Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser.
Well, I mean, I don't want to discourage people from reading stuff. If you want to read it, it's fine. Like, there's some really like evocative stuff in there, but it was just kind of like it was kind of. It's like if Joe Abercrombie wrote a bad Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser
Oh, okay.
fanfic, or at least that's how I thought of it. But
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you've read Joe Abercrombie, but
Yep, I have.
I like the work I've read of his so far.
Yeah, I've read all of the First Law books, and I just got a friend to finally start them. I've been trying for 4 years now, 5 years now, and he just like blew me off. And then he just finished the first trilogy, and he's like, I think Joe Abercrombie might be my favorite writer of all time. And I'm like, yeah, well, you should have listened 5 years ago.
That's great. You gotta love when that happens. I my friend Ty, he was trying to get me to read Jason Aaron's Thor run, and I was being kind of a stubborn asshole. and I finally read it. Which he starts it on a freaking banger with the God Butcher arc, which is
Oh
amazing.
yeah, I haven't read it, but I've seen some of the. Every once in a while, YouTube will show me like a short that shows some of that run, and it'll show you the God Butcher parts and stuff, and I'm like, oh wow, that looks great.
Oh, it's awesome. But I was like, oh man. And he's like, you should have fucking listened to me. So I was like, all right, I won't doubt you anymore. Oh, but yeah, you've covered well. One of the reasons I was interested in your channel is I'm often interested in the channels who talk about the like lesser known fantasy stuff. So you talk about like
Yeah,
Robert E. Howard, and well, I don't want to say Robert E. Howard is lesser known because I'll probably get laughed out of the room because he's probably one
I
of the
think
most.
he's lesser read than lesser known. Like everyone knows about him, but I don't know if many people read him.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a good point. But yeah, no, yeah, he's like Fritz Leiber or Fritz Leiber. He's got this huge following, or not following, but he has this huge impact, but not a lot of people read him anymore, and it's kind of sad.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and you also do like the Black Company, which I guess the Black Company is like more well known. I don't really. I mean, I've seen a lot. I've seen more people talk about the Black Company than like Conan. So.
yeah. Yeah, the big thing for me was right when I started my channel, I was reading what's called Appendix N, and it was from D&D First Edition in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Gary Gygax put a list of all of the fantasy and science fiction that influenced the creation of Dungeons and Dragons, and they're all very good. Like there's a couple of books on there that are just absolute turds, but the rest are some of the best vintage science fiction and fantasy ever written. So my goal last year was to read one book from every single author on the list, and I discovered some of the best stuff I've ever read thanks to that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I remember reading the Del Rey Coming of Conan the Cimmerian, which
Yeah.
is the Del Rey books of Conan are the ones I usually recommend. I
Oh
see you
yeah,
have them on
they're the
your
best.
channel, so you know what I'm talking about because I
Yeah.
often get kind of frustrated. I also saw the other day at my local bookshop on another little side tangent that they had a novelization of the Conan movie from Len Carter and L. Sprague de Camp,
Oh no.
aka the guys who butchered Robert E. Howard for
Yeah.
like 60 years. Um, Even though I think their fondness of him was sincere, but yeah,
Yeah,
they
their
kind of
heart was in the right place, but
they kind of screwed him over inadvertently for like 60 years before some people
yeah.
had kind of polished it off and gave us these nice 3 Del Rey books that have all the stories as they were written by him. So thank you, Del Rey, for doing that. Anyway, what was I saying?
Yeah,
Oh, all right.
the first guy that did that after they butchered his books was Carl Edward Wagner, and he was an editor of like
Oh
horror and
yeah, that's
fantasy
right.
collections and
I haven't
stuff.
read him yet.
And oh man, you're gonna have to do ebooks because physical copies are prohibitively expensive. But his Kane series is so good. It's like his version of. It's not really his version of Conan, but it's like his like badass with a sword that wanders around and stuff, and it's so good.
Yeah, I've heard his horror stuff is really good. Um,
Yes, it is. It's very good.
um, but yeah, I like. Well, I guess what I was saying was Robert E. Howard is a little underappreciated on BookTube,
Yeah,
on Fantasy BookTube anyway, and that kind of makes me sad. So I'm glad that you're carrying the torch of fantasy literature.
yeah. I'm trying. I mean, like I called Conan a murder hobo, and now it's my most popular video. So
Yeah, the greatest murder hobo ever written. I watched that video. I'm
yeah,
like, yes. Though,
yeah,
really,
he
you didn't
was.
have the Frost Giant's daughter on there? That's my favorite Conan story, at least so far. I
I
still
know.
need to read them all.
Yeah, like all of the comments are either a mix of why didn't you pick the Frost Giant's daughter or the other one. There's like
Why
it's in
didn't you
the
pick
last
this other
collect.
story?
Yeah. Well, the general consensus is the one that's probably like my number 7 or whatever it is after my list ended,
Goals was to
and it doesn't even follow Conan. It follows like this like ranger or scout that fought with Conan, and then he goes off to do this other thing, and it's really, really good. But I didn't include it because it's not Conan. It's not about him being homeless and killing people.
Well, I mean, I will note you did have the Scarlet Citadel, so
Yeah.
that's definitely on my top 5 Conan stories. Again, at least so far. I still need to read the other 2 collections. Because I've only read that first one, and damn, it was so good. I was just like,
Yeah,
oh.
the first one is so good. It helps that that one has like the Phoenix of the Sword and the Tower of the Elephant. The other two are also very good.
Oh. Hello? Look. Oh. Uh. Looks like we're having some technical difficulties at the moment. Oh, yep. I can see you now. You...
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, continue what you were saying.
Oh, just that like the first one has the Phoenix and the Sword and uh, the Tower of the Elephant, which are my favorites. Oh, and the God in the Bowl.
Oh,
But
you know, it was one of
the,
the, it was one of those. I don't mean to interrupt you, but like it was one of those things where like every story on like one level or another was a banger. Even like the like stories that were like kind of, I was like, this is
yeah,
pretty damn good still, you know.
yeah, like the one everyone tells me should have been on my list was Queen of the Black Coast, and I can't
Oh,
remember if
that's a
that's
good
in the.
one.
Yeah, and yeah, it's great, but it just didn't quite fill in my top 6. But I think that's one of the consensus ones that I should have had on my list.
Uh, yeah, it's a good one. It's probably, though I will say it's probably Howard at his most author tracty, particularly with his with Conan's speech about how he views life.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's one of the points I knocked against it was like, all right, I don't need your your preachy monologue.
Yeah, no, but I really like that speech though. It's a good one.
Yeah, the next thing I'm going to read from Robert E. Howard is his boxing short stories.
Mm.
His like
Heard those are
and
harder to
he
find.
let me show you something.
Like those in his westerns, I'm like, oh god. Oh, oh, did they? So do you know if they're like tampered with, or are they?
No, these are pure unadulterated Robert E. Howard. This is from a publisher that is from Cross Plains, Texas, like
Oh
where
wow.
he's from. So yeah, these are dedicated to him. Like they're published there and they're sold, I think, at his house. It's a museum now.
Yeah, I know. The other day, there's this lady I know, this girl I know, who was actually in Cross Plains, Texas. And I went kind of squee because you know it's where Robert E.
Yeah,
Howard was, where he lived before he unfortunately took his own life.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I've read his Solomon Kane stories, which I'd like to read again, and I've read his Conan. Well, one of the Conan collections.
yeah. I've read the Solomon Kane and I didn't like them at all. I liked the very first story, and then the rest, I just like the action scenes were cool, but everything else about it, I just wasn't the biggest fan of.
Well, I like Puritans, so
Oh well, then yeah, Solomon Kane is your man.
I think Puritans are really weird and fascinating.
That's fair, especially one with a gun and a sword.
Oh yeah, I mean to be fair, I mean Robert E. Howard was never like deep literature. At least I don't think he was. And he wasn't trying to be.
No, he wasn't. Like he wrote beautifully, but yeah, he wasn't trying to set the literary world on fire.
Yeah, I mean most of the stuff I've read from him I've liked a lot. Like I actually have his horror stories. I need to crack that one open one of these days.
Yeah, same.
I did read one of the stories, The Thing on the Roof, on my channel.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of his take on Lovecraft, though
Yeah, I'd be
it's not as purple. It's Lovecraft.
Yeah,
We'll go with
yeah,
that because I have
yeah,
problems with Lovecraft.
yeah. So do I. I've read more than half of his short stories now, and I don't want to
And
read in one ever again.
and before anyone says anything, no, it's not because the race. I mean, racism isn't cool, but it's not that. I just don't think
No.
he's a very good writer.
Yeah, same.
I just don't
Yeah.
think he's that good.
The racism and the xenophobia and everything is just icing on the cake of the
Yeah.
dislike.
And I know there's probably going to be some people like, well, isn't Robert E. Howard racist too? And I'm like, well, yeah, but it's not as offensive as Lovecraft.
Yeah, it's not like the easiest way to put it is like Robert E. Howard has some like racial tropes in his stories, but then you have H.P. Lovecraft, who was right. One of his stories takes place in Scotland, and the guy shows up on the docks, and he's trying to set up like this spooky vibe, and then out of nowhere he has to show the shifty looking black guy and then goes right back to the story, and it's like this didn't need to be here. Like, why did you add this? If like he had to fit the racism into the story that only involved white people, and it's like, well, why?
Lovecraft was a weird guy, from
Yeah,
all
yes.
accounts. Though I have to say though, I think his correspondence and like his personal letters, I think are actually far more interesting than like his actual like fictional work. Because it's probably because you get more of an insight on who he was, but
Yeah.
also like the dude knew what he was talking about in terms of like I had a friend say this once and I agree. Like if he had decided to become like a scholar or a historian of the horror genre, who knows where we would be in terms of like the history of horror. And
Yeah. Yeah, the one of the most fascinating things, like the only reason I would open my HP Lovecraft books again is because they're annotated by S.T. Joshi, and he just writes about Lovecraft's letters and stuff. So the annotations are just kind of context or building on the story, and I will go through and read all the annotations again. They're fascinating.
I've actually talked to Joshi. Well, by
Oh, really?
email.
Oh, cool.
He can be he's a bit cantankerous in his like public writing, but he was nice to me when I talked to him.
Yeah.
Though I was on
Hmm.
his Facebook group, and he stopped talking to me once I started making like critical comments about Lovecraft. So
Well,
I would love to talk to him though, dude. I mean, I don't agree with him on everything. Like I think he gives Lovecraft way too much credit, but interesting dude. He knows what he's talking about.
yeah, yeah, it's so cool. Anytime I see a book that he has edited, I'm just like, I think I need to buy this.
Yeah, I got the Penguin Clark Ashton Smith book because he edited that. So, I mean,
Oh,
usually I
yeah.
tell people like if you're interested in horror and like Penguin, if it's edited by S.T. Joshi, you're probably gonna get something good
Yeah.
because like I said, the guy knows what he's talking about and he knows what he's doing. So he also did Lord Dunsany too.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'll have to keep an eye out for that. The only Dunsany I've read is Over the Hills and Far Away, and that is, his dreamlike prose. Like I read before bed, and it got to the point where I couldn't tell if I was asleep or awake when I was reading his stuff. And someone in a book group I'm in said that I had unlocked the final form of Lord Dunsany. Like,
Yeah, I'd like to read King Elfland's Daughter at some point. See
yeah, me too.
where it kind of lines up because like Tolkien has such like a massive shadow over fantasy. So I'm kind of curious
Oh
of
yeah,
like the fantasy that like isn't directly touched by him.
yeah. And one of my favorite books from last year was The Broken Sword by Poul Anderson, and it came out at the same time as The Fellowship of the Ring, so it had no influence from The Lord of the Rings, and it's just one of the best fantasy books I've ever read.
Yeah, I have it up here. I'm hoping to read it at some point. I might save it for next year though,
It's a good one. It's brutal.
because I'm not only doing Jonathan Strange this year. I'm hoping to get to Gormenghast. Well, Titus
Oh
Grown
yeah.
anyway, and Moon Witch Spider King. So my fantasy, I'm pretty filled with the fantasy stuff at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. I have a copy of Gormenghast, and I just haven't read it yet.
Oh, did you get the big like omnibus or did you
Yes, that giant tome that's illustrated by Mervyn Peake. Yeah,
the same one I got? My parents got it. I'm like, well, I'll take it. I don't usually read omnibuses because it's kind of weird, you know. I have a hard time
yeah,
kind of scanning through it.
yeah. They're very unwieldy.
Yeah, it kind of becomes harder to read unless it's something like comics I read, like Sweet Tooth or Paper Girls. I can read those. Well, they're comics, so they're easier to read.
Yeah.
So, what other fantasy do you like? I was going to ask you about Broken Sword because I wanted to read that for a while,
Let's
and
see.
it's like that's an interesting one because it came out the same year as Fellowship of the Ring. And then there's some people like Michael Moorcock who just want to be petty and say it's better than Lord of the Rings.
I mean, I like it more than Lord of the Rings, but I think I think I I think it's important because it shows like where fantasy split. Because yeah, like you said, Tolkien has such a huge shadow, but then you have the Broken Sword, which influenced Moorcock and other writers like him, and they most certainly weren't writing like Lord of the Rings clones when everyone else was in the 70s. So it's
For
just cool
Robert E.
to see
Howard,
that. Yeah, it's cool to
because
see
Conan
that
really
point where
took off.
everything forked.
Oh, I just said because Conan took off.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing is like you have like that line of like sword and sorcery of like Robert E. Howard and Fritz Leiber and then Paul Anderson, and then it's like boom, here's what fantasy is now when Tolkien shows up.
Yeah, and it's weird because I'm like, fantasy is like, there's so much more here. I actually made a video about this recently called Is Fantasy in an Identity Crisis? Because I'm like, are we just stuck in the Tolkien Howard model? Because, like, there's different types of fantasy you can do.
Yeah, well, speaking of different types, I mean that's the nice thing about the Spear Cuts Through Water is it is there's nothing else like it. Like the way that the narrative is structured, and the thing it reminds me most of is Zelazny. Like it reminds me a lot of the way Lord of Light is written.
I still need to read him. He's like Le Guin. I've wanted to try him for a long time. I just haven't found the time yet to start him.
Well, you're in luck because I think his longest book is like 250 pages. Like he writes very small books.
I know, like, his Amber series, apparently, like, all of them are, like, less than 200 pages. And, like, the whole, there's an omnibus, and it looks like a standard fantasy novel. I'm like, what is
Yep.
this?
Yeah, it's like 1100 pages for all 10 books.
What is that? Like, hold on a minute.
Yeah, I've read almost all of his books that aren't the Amber series. I've been saving the Amber series, but I read This Immortal, which is amazing, and it shared the Hugo Award with Dune in 1965, and no one remembers This Immortal, but the book is amazing, and it's like 180 pages or something. It's like a post-apocalyptic like science fiction story.
Yeah, I've only heard of Lord of Light and Amber. And apparently Neil Gaiman's a big fan. But that dude, like, Neil Gaiman, I think what makes him interesting, that dude is just a student of the fantasy genre. Like, he knows what the hell he's
Yeah,
talking about.
yeah. Yeah, anytime I've seen something like either an audiobook on Audible or like a collection that has an introduction from him, I'm like, this will be good.
At least the introduction will be good. I don't know if the book will be good, but
Yeah, that's fair.
he did one for Dune a few years ago, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, still not really into Dune, but it was a good introduction.
That's fair. I will warn you, if you're not into Dune, you might not be into Malazan at all. It's written a lot like Dune, like especially Gardens of the Moon.
Oh, no.
It's
Oh,
got
but
like the
but it's dark and apparently has dinosaurs in it. Like
oh, it does.
I wanna read
It
about
has
that.
everything. Yeah, it has everything. Like of my buddy said he told me like a third of the way through Gardens of the Moon, he's like, nothing's happening, and I'm like, do you comprehend English? Because I more happens in the first third of Malazan or in Gardens of the Moon than happens in most fantasy books.
Yeah, my friend Jason didn't really take to Gardens of the Moon. It's actually his biggest video is when he quit. Was when he made the video saying, "I quit Malazan. Here's why." Yada yada.
I mean, it's fair. Like my buddy quit too, and I totally understand it.
Yeah, I talked to AP Canavan, and he literally just like without a beat, he was all like, "I don't think your friend is a very good reader," and I'm like, "Damn, dude." Oh my god! I was tempted to be like, "Yo, he's gonna kind of trash on your video," but I'm like, I don't know. It's like I laughed because I was just like I was not expecting him to be that blunt, but I was just like, okay. I mean,
I can flip you back to selling you on it. He was heavily inspired by Robert E. Howard. So there
I
is
have
a
heard this. I have heard this.
there
I've
is
heard
an
he's not of
intro.
the Tolkien acolytes, which is interesting.
The intro to the Two Gardens of the Moon, it's prose, but if you had told me Robert E. Howard wrote it, I would have believed you. It's
Hmm.
beautifully written, and it is very sword and sorcery.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds. I have heard he really likes Robert E. Howard, and hey, that's always a good. That's a good sign from me.
Yeah.
Though, I've heard it gets really dark. Like,
Oh, yeah. Getting that's an understatement. Yeah, it goes some places that most fantasy won't go.
apparently, there's a character called Animander Rake. I
Yep.
used to call him Andromeda Rake, like a dummy. But oh well, it's Animander Rake apparently. And
Yeah.
Whiskey Jack. I'm like, those are cool names. I want to know about these
Yeah.
guys.
Oh yeah.
I gotta know about
The
these guys.
names in there, are the best. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who else we got? There's actually a reason that people get named those names, like in world, like in like the Malazan army, and
Hmm.
so and that just makes it even better.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of takes over like Shivers from First Law.
Yeah. Hey, that's one of my favorite characters.
I do like Shivers. I mean, Best Served Cold, I was like, okay, but I like Shivers a lot.
Yeah. The next one, the Heroes, isn't that the next standalone
I
after
think
Best
so.
Served
Yeah,
Cold? That is my favorite of the standalones. It's so good. I hope you like war novels.
I do. I do. I'm actually hoping to
Okay.
read The Things They Carried sometime this year.
Oh,
Well,
cool. Yeah.
I guess that's not really a novel though. It's more like a
It
short
is a
story.
novel.
It is. I
Yeah.
thought it was more like a short story collection.
It might. I guess it might be. I think it feels more like journal entries or
Or
something
a
that.
fix up novel if you really want to go for a deep cut.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really cool. My brother had to read that for high school, and like I had just read it. I didn't know he had to read it, but then it was cool getting to talk to him about a book. And yeah, it was just wild. And then he would tell me like what his teacher was saying about the book, and I'm like, did she read the same book? Like I don't understand. Yeah, that book's great.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's kind of how it goes, I guess. He also covered Gentlemen of the Road, which I actually read a few years ago. And I remember liking it, but I was kind of like, eh. But I actually want to read it again at some point. Um, because I like Michael Chabon, or Chabon, or however the hell he pronounces his name.
That's the only book of his that I've read, and I loved it. It was so good. I mean, like
It's like it's
it's.
pretty much like the best Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser without being Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. I'm like, yeah,
Oh
boy.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
boy.
yeah.
Basically, not the Black Tongue Thief.
Okay.
Yeah. I did read Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay last year, and that was a fantastic book.
That's what I've heard. I think that'll be the next one I read from him.
I mean, don't let the chunkiness scare you away. It's you can read it and have a great time with it. It's a
Yeah.
really good book. I really enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, my big limit now, because I have such a huge pile of books all over my house, is if I want a new book like that, or if I'm looking for a certain book. Like I just picked up a copy of Mystic River. I wanted to read it, but I was waiting until basically fate brought the book to me. So if I find it at my
Another
local used
fantastic
bookstore,
book. That was actually my second favorite book last year. So yeah, there you go.
yeah, I'm looking forward to reading it. I've got a signed first edition I found just on a shelf at a used
Oh,
bookstore.
oh
I couldn't
man,
believe it.
oh man, oh man. No, I mean, it's always tough with Lahan. Sorry, Carlos, if you watch this, because he got after me once, and it's actually
Yeah, I
Lahan,
watched
I
that.
guess.
I saw that in your chat with them.
I should want to chat with them again. I'm trying to get like them to where I'm like, yo, we got to do some stuff, but they're like getting famous. And I'm still like this weird cult channel. But he's like, dude, it's Lahan. I'm like, oh, okay.
Hey, I think it's Lahane because
No,
I made sure I searched on YouTube for an interview with him and they announced his name as Lahane and he didn't correct them, so I'm gonna guess that it's correct.
no, but one of the things with Lahan is it's always hard because everyone's like, oh, where should you start? I'm like, fuck, because like you can start anywhere really. He's one of those authors like you can just kind of pick up one of his books. I mean, I read in chronological order, but you could pick up one of his books, read it, and you'll be fine. Like you could
Yeah.
probably pick up like Gone Baby Gone, and you'll read it, and you'll understand what's going on, and you'll be fine. Or Mystic River, you'll pick it up, read it, you'll probably be fine.
Yeah, that's what I had heard too, and so like I said, I just let the used bookstore gods choose what I was getting, and I saw that on the shelf, and I'm like, well, all right, this will be one of my reads soon.
But yeah, I hope you enjoyed Mystic River. That's another like fantastic book. I mean,
I'm I'm pretty sure I will.
I hope so. I mean, yeah, I'm hyping up the book, and I don't want you being all like, "Oh, it sucked." I'm like, "Oh, no, I think you'll like it." I mean, I think like Lahane's really good at like pulling out the emotion from the readers. So if you like that, and you'll probably.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, like I've covered a lot of fantasy stuff on my channel, but my reading has been super diverse for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. If I did fantasy all the time, I would get burned out probably after a while.
Yeah, I did fantasy all the time for like 15 years, so I had to change things.
Yeah, I mean, hey, nothing wrong with that. I love the fantasy genre as much. Like the books I'm reading right now are mainly fantasy, so I mean, no problem. Like that's fine. But um, I like reading other genres like science
Yeah,
fiction
it's nice to
and
it's nice to
crime.
just break up the routine. Yeah, crime fiction. Yeah, I love crime fiction, and just lately has been like that's my one of my new favorites is
Oh,
crime
I should have
fiction.
gotten that after you did Garrett PI.
Yeah, yeah. I finished The Power of the Dog recently, and
Oh
that's
yeah, yeah. I'm actually
that's been
hoping to
my
read that
favorite
next.
book.
I'm hoping to read that next month. So
Oh man, that's my favorite book so far this year, like by a wide margin.
I've heard that's a good one. Winslow's another one. I'm always like, where do you start? And Yolanda just kind of was like, start anywhere. Just go with Power of the Dog. And I'm like, fine,
Yeah, exactly. That's why I
fine.
started it was Yolanda and a couple of other people were reading it, and I'm like, all right, I'll just start there.
I'll grab this copy here, which is the one she has now, which I think is hilarious. But
You mean this one?
yeah, that one.
Yeah.
um, I guess that's a really common one now. I don't know.
Yeah, because the hardcovers are like $150,
Oh, I
so
was about to
I'm
say
not
that's
picking one
a.
of those up.
I was about to say that's a nice cover. I thought you seem more like a hipster, kind of going in the thrift store, like Macklemore style, picking
Oh,
up books.
oh yeah, you'd be surprised. Like my collection is ridiculous, and most of it is finding rare books like that at like thrift stores or used bookstores, and yeah,
Or like
that
half
the
price
hunt
books,
is
you're
almost
like
as
you're like
good.
scrolling through, like ooh.
Oh man, they drive me nuts. Like their book half price books is an incredible misnomer now with how expensive their stuff is. It's just crazy the prices they're putting on some books, and then other stuff I find for next to nothing at half price books. And the reason why is because it doesn't have a barcode because they just scan them and tag them, and if it doesn't have a barcode, then they just I don't know how they dictate the prices. but I've found some really good stuff. That anything from before like 1973, there's a good chance they'll misprice it if it's not popular.
Oh man, I've found some interesting books. I actually found the Penguin Lord Dunsany book. I actually got it on Amazon and I ended up finding it later at a half price book. So I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, that's the worst. You pick
Or
up a book and immediately find another copy.
yeah, or I I was gonna pick up a book from Jeff Noon because he sounded like an author that would like you know tickle my fancy. Um, and I freaking go into half price books. There's a book of his there. I'm like, what the hell, man? Or it's the life of a bookseller or a book reader.
Yeah, I end up buying that second copy and then giving it to someone if it's cheap enough.
But no, I see that StoryTube's about to just. I see Carlos and Yolanda are about to just strap up and get everyone on for Power of the Dog. So,
Yeah.
are you going on there?
Yep.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I'm like, I thought I saw you on there, but like,
Yeah, me holding my cat that Yolanda said she's in love with.
yeah, no, it's oh my gosh, yeah, it's a. I'm looking forward to reading it. I'm hoping it's good. I haven't read a lot of like real like I've read a lot of really good books, but like the only one where I was like, damn, that's a 5-star was Kindred this year. So
Oh wow, yeah, Kindred's on my list to read it. I haven't
oh,
read
it's
it yet.
phenomenal. It's mm, mm, I already did a discussion on it though. We spoiled the whole thing, so maybe read it first and then watch the
Yeah, I'll do
chat.
that.
Yeah, you'll watch it and like, oh, he spoiled the whole thing. But no, yeah, no, yeah, Carlos and Yolanda have turned me on some interesting books.
Oh yeah, me too. Like three of my favorite books this year were thanks to them.
I thought I was a wide reader. I watched their channel and they're talking about like Spanish books I've never even freaking heard of. I'm like,
Yep.
what the hell is that? I've never even heard of this. And oh yeah,
Yeah.
one of my favorite story with Carlos is Blood Meridian review. He spoke Spanish in the video, and I left a comment. I'm like, oh, that's some nice Spanish there, man. And he's like, that's probably because I'm from Spain originally.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I forgot. Darn. He was just like, it's fine. Like, don't worry about it. But no, it's a good, I mean, I thought I was a wide reader. They've read stuff I've never even heard of. Like, I don't think I would have heard of if they had not said anything about it.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about their channel is they just cover so much ground that I haven't seen.
Yeah, and though it kind of makes me jealous. I'm like, I'm usually the guy who picks the weird, obscure books. Like,
Yeah.
they're cramping my style a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I'm over here making stuff about like
I'm,
dust covered vintage science fiction and fantasy, and then
I'm like, oh
they're
yeah, talk about
casting a
Robert E.
huge net.
Howard, and then we'll talk, and then you'll be a
Yeah.
part of the hipster club. Or like, oh yeah, they did cover Elric on or Carlos did on oh man, oh when the new like hardcover bounds came out that like
Oh yeah.
has them all together. I'm like, oh
Yeah,
yeah, I
those
forgot
are
all.
super cool.
I might pick those up because in all honesty, it's a bitch trying to track all those books down.
Yeah, I mean, I have been collecting the Eternal Champion books, and
Oh my gosh, they're ridiculous. I mean,
I have like 14, and they're from like four different publishers. So
yeah, no,
it's
Moorcock's
just
really great at like his imagination is ridiculous, but like oh my god, like he is really terrible at like chronology. Like he cannot
oh
like get his stuff together to save his life because he always like Now I've heard some of his other stuff like Gloriana and like Piat or how the hell you pronounce that is historical fantasy
yeah,
series. I heard those are like a lot like more structured and like better overall. I just have not read them
yeah. The
because I
only
kind
thing
of
I've read
like the
from
weird
him,
Elric stuff. Because I kind
yeah,
of like it.
I've read a couple of the Elric novels, and then he has this really weird book called The Black Corridor. It's a science fiction book, and it's like a weird psychological thing that takes place in a like spaceship, and they're just traveling across the universe, and it's really weird. It's like the main character was slowly descending into insanity, and you're looking through his POV, and it gets to the point where both you and the character can't figure out what's real and what's not. It's really weird.
Yeah, I've read Elric. I read the Corum books, which is basically just anti Elric, but not as weird and cool as Elric. And
Yeah.
the Whispering Swarm, which was like a weird meta autobiography slash fantasy novel, which I didn't take to. I might read it again though at some point.
Is that his more recent one?
That's one of his more recent ones. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that was the one I was interested in because I listened to a podcast interview with him and he was talking about it, and then for the life of me, I couldn't remember what it was called. And he has 9 billion books,
Oh
so
my
it was
gosh,
hard
yeah,
to it was hard to figure it out.
he's ridiculous. He's probably the most like prolific fantasy author alive.
Yeah, and especially in like the 70s, where I think I can't remember what book it was, but he wrote a book in like 3 days. They were like, "Hey, we need this Monday," and it's like, "Okay, it's Thursday night," and they're like, "Yeah, we need Monday." So he Friday, Saturday, Sunday, he just banged out an entire book and just sent it in unedited. They just published it.
Bet that book was shit.
It was I think it was one of the Hawkmoon books.
Oh really? Oh wow.
Yeah, of
So
all
yeah,
things.
basically he's like the Brando Sand. He was like the Brando Sando of his day, I guess. Well, he's still alive, so
Yeah.
and he's still
Yeah,
he's still he's still cranking them.
yep.
Oh, sorry, I thought I saw something on my phone,
Oh no,
but we're
you're good.
good. Yeah, no, Moorcock's a weird guy.
He's interesting. He has a book that I've read multiple times now, and I may end up reading it every year until I have it memorized. And it's called Wizardry and Wild Romance, and it
I've
is
been wanting.
his.
I've wanted to read that for a while.
It's
Cause,
so good. The one you need to get. I'll show you the cover.
but it looks like one of those weird ones that are hard to find. You know.
It is because this was the last time it was published, and it has an introduction. Let me double check. It has an introduction by China Meeville, and it has an afterword by Jeff Vandermeer.
Oh my god, I love those
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, exactly. That when I saw this, I was like, oh, okay. And it is his. I mean, they're his essays on the history of the fantasy genre, from the origins all the way until
So you've read Epic
about the
Pooh, I take
1980s.
it.
Do what?
You've read Epic Pooh, I take it.
Oh yeah, Epic Pooh is in here.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I've read Epic Pooh quite a few times.
it's an interesting one.
Yeah, and this basically takes Epic Pooh and just it is not as negative as Epic Pooh, but it just covers the entire history of fantasy. And what's really interesting is the first time I read it, I hadn't read a lot of old fantasy, and then the second time I read it, I had read probably about half of the books he mentions, and it just totally changes the book because now you've like, oh, okay, now
Well,
I
I mean,
understand
Moorcock
exactly what
is
he's
how I
talking
came
about.
across like Fritz Leiber. So this is when I'm like, oh, Fritz Leiber isn't just like a, cheesy, Thundar the barbarian type guy. Like, oh, he's got his own thing going here. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, I think the problem with Fritz Leiber is like when you, especially with the audiobooks, which I listen to them because I've got a lot of brain dead time at work, so I just listen to audiobooks all day. And Neil Gaiman was the reason why those got published, of course.
God bless that
And
man. He's
yeah,
he's literally the St. Joshi of fantasy. He's dragging fucking fantasy by the chain.
exactly.
Oh my
And
god.
so I listen to them, and the problem is they're in chronological order instead of publication order. And the problem with that is like the origin short stories for Fafhrd and Grey Mouse are just okay, and then you get Ilmet and Lonkmar, which is one of the best short stories I've ever read, and so they're like burying the lead in that collection of short stories because that's the last one. And I've talked to people and they've been like, "Yeah, I didn't really like it. I quit after the second story," and I'm like, "You missed the best one."
Yeah, I'm just like, bro, just read Ilmet and Lankmar, and if you are not sold, forget it.
Yeah,
You're probably not gonna
yeah.
get into it.
That's what I tell everyone now. It's so good. Like, someone was telling me that I can't remember what they said, and I'm like, and I was mentioning my favorite part, which was when they were drunk and they snuck into the thieves guild, and then they thought their disguises were working, and as they walked past, the guards are like, "Those are the worst disguise. Those are the worst hobo disguises I've ever seen."
Yeah, it's good, man. I like it a lot. I like the one where they both have like a bro fight, and they're like, "Screw you, I'm going over here. Screw you, I'm going over here." And then they get the same job like separately, and they end up meeting again. They're like, "Oh, hey."
Yeah,
You're like, "What?"
yeah. I love how both serious and lighthearted those stories can be, and they're just so fun.
Oh yeah, yeah. My I don't know if I would I call Tori a friend. I don't know, but Tori Talks read Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, and she didn't take to it, and I was kind of sad because
I th- I think I saw. I think she wrote a review in a book group I'm in. She get like, and she didn't. She was like, "I'll read the newer stuff that has buddy fantasy," and I'm like, "Oh." But yeah, that's fair. I mean, a lot of people don't like it.
yeah, I mean I remember reading the Gentleman Bastard books, and it was like, oh yes, this reminds me a lot of like the best parts of Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, just without the kind of weird dirty old man stuff.
I want to read those. I haven't read anything from Scott Lynch, and I'm really looking forward to finally getting into them.
Like I think Liza Lockamora, which was my favorite book I read last year, was just like it's one of those just very satisfying reads, you know.
Yeah, I've wanted to read it for a long time, and then I was doing research for a video talking about the picaresque novel, like that subgenre, and people kept saying, "Oh yeah, that's what Liza Lockamore is. It's like a modern picaresque," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, well then I most certainly need to move it to the top of my
Picaresque.
list."
That's an I've not heard because like I think of them more as like adventures, like you know. I don't
Oh,
know
that's what a
if you ever
picaresque
read
is. A
if you ever
picaresque
read
is
like
like,
if you've ever read like damn it, well Fafhrd and Grey Mouser. Would you call those picaresque?
yeah, those are picaresque. Like
I
they're
guess
they're
my I
they're
guess my
lovable
meaning is
scoundrels.
I guess my meaning is I guess I lost something in translation because like when I think of like picaresque, I think of like all the pretty horses or something like that.
That might be picturesque, picturesque, but picaresque is picaresco is what it's from, or picaro, which is a Spanish word for rogue, like a roguish type character. And so, what the picaresque is a novel about like a lovable rogue. Like they're a scoundrel, and they're not necessarily a good guy, but you still like them, and
Mm-hmm.
they're up to they're doing their things. They're scamming people or robbing people, and so yeah, you have like Fafhrd, or you have like Gentleman of the Road is a modern day picaresque,
Well,
and
okay then. I guess Gentleman Bastards is that. I didn't think of it like that before. Because like when I think of picaresque, I thought it's like because I remember reading like it's kind of plotless. It's more like a series of like side adventures.
yeah,
Which
a lot of them are like
I
that.
guess you could call Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser that because basically their stories are just getting into wacky adventures. So I guess that fits. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, the thing is most of these subgenres, the definition is so nebulous that it's
So
like, well,
loose.
yeah,
Like
it fits
weird
everything.
fiction. You know, you've heard of
Yeah.
that. I hope. My God, I will say, as much as I respect St. Joshi, one of the other things that bugs me is that he seems to just think that weird fiction is horror, just a funny name for like supernatural horror. And I'm just
Yeah.
like yelling at the screen, like it's not just that, you know.
Yeah, like I did a video about dark fantasy, and it's like it has no definition. There's like two opposing definitions, and one of them is just horror with extra steps. Like it's just a horror genre just called dark fantasy instead. And it's like, no, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, or like if you read something like Berserk, which is
Yeah,
basically just
Berserk is definitely dark fantasy.
oh yeah, definitely, but it's just like damn, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there like is a difference between like dark fantasy and like grimdark, for instance, because like I find
Yes, there is.
grimdark
There
is
definitely is.
kind of like I hate to say it, but like this, but like grimdark is grittier,
Yes. Yeah. A
while dark
grimdark is a lot more like
fantasy,
a
I think of like Coraline or Elric, where dark
yes.
but still fantastical.
Yes. It's like the generally accepted definition was from Carl Edward Wagner, and it's fantasy with horror elements.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll take that. It's Oh wait, in that book you had wizards and wild romances, isn't it?
Yeah.
Does he have Starship Stormtroopers in there? Because he really,
Oh,
because he does,
let me look.
he bashes H.P. Lovecraft in it, and I love it. So
Oh yeah, I love that too. I don't think that's in here, but I love that essay and him talking about what's his face. Is it-
I do disagree with him about Heinlein because I like Heinlein a lot, but yeah, oh well, you can't win them all.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, it's interesting. Um, I've definitely thought of doing like epic poo just with like Lovecraft and pissing off all the Lovecraft fanboys, but like I don't know if it's worth the effort though. Like, to be honest
Yeah.
with you,
They don't I don't know if very many Lovecraft fans are nice, so
I've met a
you
couple.
get a lot of mean comments.
Yeah, I mean I've met a couple. They're pretty nice, except they're like oh Lovecraft's not that bad. I'm like he's pretty bad. Or it's like oh
Yeah,
it's the
I'd rather
ideas. I'm like yeah okay fine I'll give you that. His ideas are pretty cool, but
yeah, his ideas are cool. The problem is he beats you over the head with like trying to get to the point. Like at the Mountains of Madness is an awesome concept, but I was listening to it and I zoned out at work for like 20 minutes because it was boring, and then I I started paying attention again and they was still talking about the same thing. It's like we get it, bro. Like your mind is broken from looking at that thing. Like you've been saying it for
you
20
know,
minutes
I
now.
think it's kind of hilarious. There's like an irony there that like Lovecraft, everyone's like, oh, it's about the unknown, and like the dude freaking over describes things to where he takes
Yeah.
away from that effect. So
Yeah.
basically, he's screwing himself over in that regard.
Yeah. I will say the Dunwich Horror is a banger. I love that
Yeah,
story.
I do
But
like that one. I like the Color Out of Space though. That one's a fucking bop. Like I like the Color Out of Space. That one's got some balls.
yeah.
So basically we're on the same page about like we're kind of on him, but there's like a couple stories we're like, okay, that's fine. I can
Yeah.
I can deal with this. This supplants me.
Yeah. Honestly, I'd rather just read like Robert Chambers or Clark Ashton Smith if I want my weird horror.
I have wanted to read Clark Ashton Smith. I have the Penguin book that they did. I don't know where to start though.
Yeah, I don't either. I got lucky. I managed to pick up his entire collection of fantasy short fiction. Nightshade Books made like a collection, and it's everything he wrote in the fantasy genre. And so I picked those up. His writing is dense. And then I have another book that's like some of his.
I've heard he's a better prose stylist than Lovecraft is.
Oh yeah, he is. He's on another level compared to just about anyone. It's incredible.
All right. I mean, I saw you made a video about him, so
Yeah, so I made that, and then I was thinking about it later, and someone was pointing out that I should try it again, and I planned on doing it anyways. And I had been listening to them, and I think part of it was the narrator because I opened up another Clark Ashton Smith book I have, and the story I started reading it, and I read it all in one sitting, and it was like nightmare fuel from the start to finish. It was so good.
I guess that really tells you the nice of a it really shows you how good a good narrator or
Oh yeah, yeah. Narrators can make or break books.
yeah, there was one book I listened to once, and the dude kept like breathing really heavily. It was bad.
Oh
It was
no.
really bad. Like it sounded like he was gonna like die of emphysema in like 5 minutes. You're like, dude, like take a fucking break, man. Oh my god.
My buddy suggested an economics book to me on audio, and I was listening to it, and the dude was literally like he would like pause and burp, like, and it was loud, and I'm like, what is happening? And the book was from like the audiobook I think was recorded in like the 70s or something, and it's like you would have thought that they would have edited some of this out when they converted it to digital. But no. And then it was like there were like takes where he basically like stopped and he was like mumbling under his breath and like cussing and stuff, and then it goes back to him reading the audiobook, and I'm like
Sounds so,
like
I
really?
gotta read this now. I want to hear that. Like, I don't want
I
to.
mean, they're rare, and the book is interesting, but it's called the
Is it?
Rothbard Reader,
Is it
and
on? Is it on? Is it on?
it's on Audible.
Is it on Audible?
Yeah, it's the Rothbard Reader by Murray Rothbard, and like it's, I mean, this is some like deep in the weeds economics, but
Oh shit! It's like some hardcore libertarian shit, man.
yes, it is. Yes, it most certainly is. My buddy was like, "Read this," and I'm like, "Fine." So it's good. Like Murray Rothbard is a
Oh
decent
god,
guy,
I'm
but
getting flashbacks to my like hardcore libertarian days.
yeah, and the problem is the narrator does kind of ruin it because he sounds like such a douche. Like he's just a jerk. And his delivery of everything from Murray Rothbard, I thought that Rothbard was just like this arrogant guy, and then I watch speeches from him and he is the nicest, kindest guy you'll ever hear. And it's like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
I mean, Rothbard seems like an interesting guy. He just has some really bad takes, which is kind of a staple of like libertarian. Like,
yeah, let's
good
go."
idea, but like implementation is pretty bad. So anyway, I don't want to
Yeah.
get into that in this discussion
Yeah.
today.
Yeah, no.
The
No.
Rothbard reader. I'll listen to the audio sample and see if I get any like good stuff.
Yeah.
Or yeah, I mean I don't listen to audiobooks because I just get distracted real easily. But um, there's some like Stephen Pacey did the First Law, and he's phenomenal.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he is.
I
He
mean,
most
I don't
certainly
know if
is.
you play video games, but Roger Clark, who played Arthur in Red Dead Redemption 2, he's done some good audiobooks.
Oh, really?
Uh huh. And Jeremy Irons did Lolita. I really enjoyed that a lot.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Also,
Yeah,
he
he's
has a great voice, so there
yeah, he does.
I admire. I get made fun of by some friends of mine for this, but like there's some like voice of men like I don't know Keith David or like Jeremy Irons. I'm like that's a good voice. I wish I could talk
Oh
like
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Like are you attracted to them? I'm like no, just what do I want? What can I say? Like that's an alpha voice right there.
Yeah. I just like to hear him speak to me.
It's good to go to sleep too. Mm-hmm. Unless you read like The Wasteland and it's like really bizarre and you're just like ugh. I don't recommend reading that before you go to bed. I'll put it that way, or listening to it before you go to bed.
The Wasteland?
The Wasteland, yeah, it's a poem by
Oh,
T.S.
okay.
Eliot.
Oh, okay. I
Mm.
have two T.S. Eliot collections and like I picked them up a while back and I keep meaning to crack them open and I just haven't.
Oh, there's some weird ass. There's probably gonna be some weird ass shit in there. I mean, if you get to the Wasteland, like that one's just, oh, it'll overwhelm you. I love it, but it's really weird.
As I say, I'm intrigued.
Very strange. It's basically like post-apocalyptic, angsty 20th century Arthurian legend, kind of.
Okay then.
Might be a dream. Who knows? You also have some baseball novels I see on here. I guess you didn't really take to the natural. like this
No.
thumbnail. The most bizarre baseball book ever written.
It's
Seriously,
so
I have no idea how this exists.
it's so strange. Like a buddy at work gave it to me. I'm a huge baseball fan. Like that's the only sport I follow, and I
I bet you were
just
thrilled when the Rangers won. Is that Rangers garb? The
yep. Oh yeah. I was very thrilled. I started like following baseball, like watching every day in 2012, which was like the worst time because then the Rangers were god awful for most of that time until just last year. But yeah, I love baseball, and I have a buddy at work that is a Rangers super fan, and he brought me a copy of The Natural for my birthday, and I was like, "Oh, cool! He's like, I don't know when you'll get to it, but I thought you might like it. And I was like, I'll just start it today. And so I read it. That book is so strange. It's so incredibly weird.
Is it bad or is it
I,
just
I can't make up my mind on whether or not it's bad because like the author, I can't remember the name of the author, but he's like a renowned like lit fic writer. And then he writes like this baseball book in the same style that he writes all of his lit fic. And at some points it's like, dude, you were like trying way too hard. And then at other points you're just completely engrossed. And it's incredibly strange. Like someone dies in like the first chapter
like
of a baseball book.
my God?
Yeah, it's so weird.
I
It's
just know
just
it as a movie, The Natural.
and the movie's nothing like it. Like the tone is completely different like in the movie. And the book ends in just like the darkest way. It ends the way a Cormac McCarthy novel would
My
end. It's
God.
like it's so strange.
Oh my God, that's
Like it's
crazy.
worth reading cuz it's short like it but man,
It's so weird. It sounds really weird. All right.
it's very weird. It's got strange pacing. Like I think that the big game at the end has as many pages dedicated to it is like the first like 3 months of like his journey as a baseball player. It's just weird the way everything is paced in that book.
So
Yeah.
I also see. I guess you just like Paul Anderson. I tried one of his like Norse inspired books, and I just kind of. I wasn't bad. I just kind of wasn't. I wasn't feeling it at the time, so I returned it to the library. But I do have the Broken Sword up here. I hope to read that at some point.
Yeah, I started with, I'm looking for the book, The Boat of a Million Years, which is like I guess it could be like a bind up of short stories, but it's about a group of people that are immortal, but they don't know it. And it starts at like Phoenician times and it works its way all the way up into like the distant future.
Oh,
And
what? They don't even notice. They're just like, oh
well,
well,
no, they
it's
notice eventually, but it's like when they're young, they don't realize it until like they aren't aging, and then their family is and stuff, and it's all these like conflicts about that, and them trying to basically hide the fact that they're immortal. And that book was good, but I didn't know what to do with it because I didn't even know anything about Paul Anderson at the time. And then when I started all the Appendix N stuff, I read The Broken Sword, and then I read his really trippy book, the High Crusade. That book is insane. I mean, it's insane. It's about aliens landing in an English town during the Crusades, and these aliens, like it's a scout ship, and this is all in like the first chapter. It's like a scout ship, but they're so far advanced they don't use like hand to hand weapons, so they just get rolled by these knights in this town. And then like the lord and stuff
they
basically
just
take the
get
one
they get
survivor and force
smoked.
yeah it force like and then so the one survivor is like forced to take this entire like medieval town on this ship, and they're like they're basically trying to get him to take them to the Middle East for the Crusades, and instead he just like jumps them to the nearest like colony of his like
No,
empire, and
oh
like and then it
no.
just takes off from there. It's so crazy.
I'll have to check that out. Damn, that's. I've heard
Yeah,
like
that's a
Tau
fun
Zero
book.
from him is really good, and
I
Three
want to
Heart,
read that. I haven't read it.
Three Hearts and a Lion, and the
Oh,
Broken
Three
Sword.
Hearts, Three Lions is so good. It's very oddly paced because I think that it was originally like a very tiny novella, and they were like, "Hey, this needs to be a novel," and so he's like, I guess I'll try to fill it out," and so it suffers from that, but that is like the core of D&D. Like the paladin is in that, like the shape shifting wizard is in that. The how trolls work in like D&D is in that, like their regeneration and stuff. It's really cool.
I'll have to check that. Damn, that sounds kind of cool. Um, I also see you've covered Larry. I can never pronounce the dude's name. Is it Correa?
Yeah,
Correa?
Correa, Larry Correa. Yeah.
Isn't it that
I,
guy who got
I
like kicked out of the what was it, the Hugo Awards because he was like freaking out about stuff? Like I remember he got like it's called like Sad Puppies or something.
Yeah, like that whole thing is so weird because he was saying basically, you can kind of stack the voting, like manipulate it with like basically giving people like a list of what to vote for and encourage and like basically, stuffing the ballot with your own fans. And then, and he was saying that he just thought that it was kind of cooked a little, the voting. And then,
Mm-hmm.
this last Hugo Awards happened and the voting was completely cooked. But anyways, it was a whole different reason back then. And, I think he was mad that his biggest thing was he was mad that a lot of very, very popular like science fiction and fantasy books weren't even getting put up to vote, which doesn't make sense when the Hugo's a popularity contest. But there's a and it's a whole that thing's a whole mess. I try not to even get into that
Is his
because it's
books
just
any good? Are his books any
oh,
good?
his books are fantastic. Yeah, like he has a series called the Grim Noir Chronicles, and it is fantasy that it's from in the 1930s, and it's like a noir fantasy series, and it is so good. He is like a master of like action scenes. He's just so good with his action scenes, and then he has Monster Hunter International, which is
I've heard of that.
uh
I've seen some of the covers. I'm like, that looks really cheesy.
oh,
Like
it is
too
cheesy. It
too
is some
too
like
too cheesy for me. Like
the books are very good. It is
I can
some
deal with
like
some
bro.
bullshittery in my science fiction and fantasy, but like I don't know if I can do that.
It is some like hyper masculine, like bro ass, let's go kill monster stuff most of the time, but they're very fun. And like he has some really interesting concepts in there. Like Frankenstein is in there, and his whole way Frankenstein, basically how corpses are reanimated, it's really interesting. And then that series I read the first book of, Son of the Black Sword, it's like I said it in the video. It's like modern day sword and sorcery. It's very action oriented. It reads like an action novel, like a spy thriller or something, or like an assassin, like a modern day assassin and stuff, but in fantasy. Like the dude is such a badass, the main character. It's very, very good.
I'll have to check that out. Or wait, no, I think my friend Liam likes Larry Correa. I'm not sure. Have you ever watched Liam's Lyceum? I think you would
Yes.
like that channel.
Yeah, I do like that
Not
channel.
not
Yeah.
only is he a good dude, but he also covers some pretty obscure, weird fantasy that not a
He
lot of
does.
people talk about. And I'm
Yeah,
glad he's
he's
doing it.
definitely doing a service to the booktube community by introducing all these weird things.
Yeah, no, he oh god, what's one? He was talking about a weird like Mormon science fiction book, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's that's definitely outside of my wheelhouse.
No, but yeah, good dude though. He's got some interesting opinions and interesting books that he covers. He
Yeah, he
got
does.
me wanting to read what's the guy's name? Lavi Tidhar Tidhar. I don't know. He's Israeli. I don't know. But he got me into wanting to read his books. So yeah.
Yeah, he commented on my murder hobo video, and he's like, I don't think Conan's a murder hobo. And then I responded, but like there's some weird automated thing with like YouTube's like censoring comments. And I thought it was because I said homicide in the comment, and then I found out it was because I said homeless. Like it auto moderated the word homeless. And I couldn't undelete my own comment, so I couldn't even respond to him.
I like how
It's so
Steve
weird.
Donahue even goes Conan is murder hobo. Well, now I've heard everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy's a hoot. He doesn't like Cormac McCarthy. He's hilarious. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I love his channel. I watch a lot of his channel.
I would like to talk to him one day at some point. Maybe. Wow, you got everyone. You got Michael K. Vaughn. That dude's whole brand is like weird pulp stuff that everyone hasn't
He's
read.
he is who inspired me to finally make it a booktube channel.
Oh,
Like I
really?
happened to be watching him. I happened to be watching him, and he was just saying, I'm just talking into my phone and or all that, and I'm like, oh, I mean, I could do that, and I've always wanted to, and just the weird stuff he was covering at the time, that was exactly what I wanted to do.
I like Mr. Pavone here, or whatever the guy's name. He goes, if you ever want to read some of the best, all cap best, melee combat stories ever put to paper, read Robert E. Howard's Conan stories. Well, I'm sorry, bro, but literally says in the title of the video, I read
Yeah.
every Conan story.
I'm
That's a
hoping
nice
he's
comment,
just
though.
talking to the other commenters. Yeah, I saw
So,
the comment and
what?
I'm like, all right, man.
Yeah, no,
I hit
it's.
most of the really mean ones.
Wait, there's mean ones on here?
There were mean ones, yeah. Let me see if I can find one. I think I screenshotted them.
Oh,
I sent them to
you got
my.
Mifune, Toshiro Mifune to comment. All right. Oh, that's funny. Oh yeah, God in the Bowl is a great story. I forgot all about that. I feel like an idiot now.
Yeah, I likened it to Clerks because Conan is like, I'm not even supposed to be here today. Like he's just like there, and he was there to
Like, out of
like
my way,
steal.
woman. I've come here to take the jewel. And they're like, bro, there's some weird ass shit going on here. Like,
Yeah, there's a murder. And he's
yeah.
like, huh, let's solve this.
He's like, fine, I guess I'll solve it with you guys. You're like, oh my god, this guy. Oh wow, you've even covered wild cards. I haven't dared touch wild cards because like I'm admittedly kind of weird with anthologies. It's like flipping a coin. You don't know what stories are going to be bad or
Yeah, fortunately,
unless they're
like,
SD Joshi, then it's probably going to be at least interesting.
yeah, they're all good in the first one. There's no, I haven't ran into a bad story until I got into the fourth one, and fortunately, like the first one is kind of setting the stage, but the second one is a cohesive narrative that's just split among different characters that are written by different authors. And then the third book is a mosaic novel. So each POV is written by a different author, and then George R. R. Martin is the one that put them together and created. And it's like a cohesive novel, and but each POV is incredibly distinct because it's written by someone else.
Fair enough. I mean, I know Neil Gaiman wrote some bits in that, which I'm like, oh, what hasn't that
Oh,
guy
he
done?
did?
Yeah,
I didn't
apparently.
know that.
No,
Wow.
I mean, I haven't read them yet, so I don't know. Well, I mean, there's it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, especially even just in wild cards. There's like 36 of them or something.
Oh my god. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if I can. If George could finish, wins a winner, that would be great. I'd appreciate that a lot.
Hey, he's not doing wild cards anymore. He's handed it off. So he handed it off like as soon as the Game of Thrones TV show came out, I think, because he was like, "Oh yeah, I got a lot on my plate." So his second in command is now the lead editor for wild cards.
You also have Dungeons and Dragons content, which that reminds me of one of my little favorite fun facts. Apparently, Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser is where thieves guilds come from.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and I mean they're listed in Appendix N, and like Fritz Leiber was like a guest of honor at Gen Con in like the late '70s,
Yeah, apparently his
and
dad was like a stage actor. Apparently, so that's pretty
yep,
cool.
yeah, it's the whole
It's probably why his characters feel so vivid. It's because he has like that actor background.
yeah,
That's kind of a
it's most
wild guess
certainly.
on my part. If someone, maybe Liam, who would probably watch this, would be like, "You're wrong."
I actually think that that's mentioned, and I was reading an article about Fritz Leiber, and they actually brought that up as being an influence for the way he wrote his characters.
Though, like with Conan, I don't know. I don't know how they're so good. I mean, it's just kind of, it's great like chest pounding literature, you know.
Yeah, it most certainly is.
Where you're like, yeah, I'm gonna go punch somebody. Wait, no, what? It gets you going. Is all I gotta say. But anyway,
Yes, it does.
what was I saying? Oh yeah, D&D, Fritz Leiber, Thieves Guild.
Yep.
Pretty weird.
Yeah, that's I've been like obsessed with like the history of Dungeons and Dragons since I got into tabletop RPGs, and so Appendix N was like just a natural like next move, and to see all the pieces of Dungeons and Dragons in these older fantasy novels, it's just so fascinating.
So, like, do you play, or are you just like interested in the game?
Oh,
Like,
I play like I don't play Dungeons and Dragons because I don't like fifth edition, but I've played like Pathfinder, Pathfinder second edition, and then I really like D&D 4e, but no one plays it. And then Dungeon Crawl Classics, which is just like the cracked out version of like old school D&D, and it takes all of the Appendix N books and just all the craziness in them and just turns it to 11, and it's just incredibly fun. It's incredibly lethal. Like I'm the eternal GM, so like I run all the games. I don't ever get to play them. I get to run them, but that's fine because I have a terrible attention
So
span,
so
and
you
if
like
I'm running the game,
so
I
you
get to
like
do
punishing
something.
your players? Is that what you're saying? You're one of those guys.
My games are I have only ever killed one player,
Oh,
but my
okay.
games are incredibly lethal. Like it is definitely like you don't mess around. Like they're always fighting, like they're always fighting above like their weight class in the games I run.
Can't do like a or you can't like do like a Conan type adventure where they just deal with like a crazy ape or something.
No, I've done that. I've done that. They fought like a they fought there's a D&D monster that's like a six-armed gorilla, and it
Oh
is
shit!
incredibly strong. Yeah, and one
Damn,
of
I
its
really want to go
abilities
through
is
that player's handbook again.
one of its abilities is like when it hits you, it knocks you backwards, and so then if you hit something behind you, you take damage from hitting the object too. So it's just really cool. It has knockback, and so it's one of the better monsters for fighting like solo because it's good at kind of keeping the area around it clear so it can focus on one character.
I mean, I'm sure you also like Liam's channel because he also talks about D&D on his channel
Yeah,
from
his
what I know.
Forgotten Realms video, I watched that. He's talking about his however many hundredth Forgotten Realms book he'd read because he's
I
reading all of them.
I was gonna ask. So, are you one of those like grumpy people who likes playing like the old school D&D, or
Oh
are
no.
you like okay with the new D&D?
I don't like the design of 5e, but it's still fine. Like old school D&D doesn't make any sense. Like the way armor class works, like THAC0, that's to hit armor class 0. You have to do like it's like it's like adding negative numbers, and it's like why are you doing
I
this?
mean,
There's
I
way
haven't
easier
played, so
ways.
I don't know. I'm just like I did play
I've only
Pathfinder in
played
high school. That was fun. Though my character
yeah,
got
I
stuck
love
in the dream world. So
that's what I started with was Pathfinder first edition. Yeah, and I love it.
yeah, I've also played 5e, which is fine. I've also played Fate, which I really like because
Fate looks
basically,
really cool.
I mean, basically it's like you get all the like cool stuff I like to do, like because I fucking hate combat. I mean, no offense to anyone I've played with, it was great games, but I just don't like the combats because you have to fucking wait. You sit there and you're like, really takes the
That's
tension out of you. You think it's all like this tense, unless you're like a god tier, like Matthew Mercer or something. Like it's like
That's why I run the games because I don't want to wait for my turn. If I'm running the game, it's always my turn.
yeah. I know. I just I get kind of frustrated with that.
Yeah, I don't blame you. My combats are fast. No one's waiting long because if you do, I'll whoever's taking too long, I'll end up just oh, you're the one that's going to get beat up now.
Like, oh no, don't beat me up. No, but it. Oh man, I still enjoyed. I mean, I enjoy the role play part more. Is my point I was trying to make there.
Yeah.
Oh man.
It's so interesting because players are always so different, and I've had a table that was just
So lately, I've
like
been
they weren't murder hobos. They were just like I want to fight. I want the combat. They were tacticians, and I mean that's fun. And then it's also fun to just have incredible role players. So
I see. Yeah. I even see you did a video on the earliest origins of Cyberpunk. I'm not even really that big of a fan of Cyberpunk, but all right.
yeah, the earliest origins, like the pre-cyberpunk stuff, is like Alfred Bester, like The Star's My Destination, and The Demolished Man. That book is intense. That book is such a wild ride, and it just shares a lot of it shares a lot of the structure of cyberpunk, but none of the nihilism of like cyberpunk. So the stuff I talk about in that video, and it was just really interesting. And like, and then I found out that post cyberpunk exists. Like the Expanse series is considered post cyberpunk.
what that is.
It's
I'm a
just
sci-fi fan. What the hell?
it takes like the elements of cyberpunk, but gets rid of like the nihilism and stuff, and replaces like the people in there actually have like a purpose in life, kind of thing. So, but it takes like the cybernetic implants and all that stuff from cyberpunk, but pushes it into a less bleak setting, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I see Liam also commented, and guess who he recommended? But Fritz Leiber. I wouldn't expect anything better from him.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. There's just like I don't know. I find that people who like are like part technology, part human. I just find that I'll put it this way. I find transhumanism is kind of a creepy idea.
It is a very strange concept. I mean, like to augment yourself like that. I always think about that because like one of my favorite anime when I was a kid was all right, now my mind's blanking. Ulp, Ghost in the Shell. And I
Oh
was
yeah,
thinking
it's a
about
great
it,
film.
and I'm like, that's not their body anymore. Like, what happens when they quit their job? Like, they have nothing left. Like, they're so yeah, stuff like that is just so strange.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a book. Is all I have to. It's a genre. Is all I have to say. As
Yeah,
or well, transhumanism is. I mean, I read Transmetropolitan from Warren Ellis, and I mean that's probably the best take on transhumanism I've seen. So I mean, I'm not really into transhumanism though. It's kind of
yeah.
again, it's a weird idea. Oh man, it's just oh, ugh. I don't like thinking about it. No, but I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Alfred Bester, I actually have The Stars My Destination. I just don't know when the hell I'm gonna read it.
Yeah.
I was
It,
gonna read it
it's
in 2020, but then I got really fucking depressed because the pandemic happened.
yeah. Yep. I read all of Malazan in 2020 because it wasn't hard enough to be living in 2020. So
Yeah, my friend Matt from Matt on Books did a similar thing. He read, I think he either read or reread the Malazan books, and he's like, "Oh man," I'm like, "Well, I guess I got all this free time now," and I'm like, "Yeah." He's trying to get me to read Malazan.
it's so weird. Like every booktube conversation somehow circles back to
I know.
that series.
Seriously, like I'm one of those like hipsters who like tries to seek out like that's why I like your channel. You're like one of the hipster channels. Like you look at like Robert E. Howard and like Fritz Leiber and Michael Moorcock, And then
It's
like
just weird stuff.
yeah, Malazan though. Oh my god, I see like 200 videos. There's even whole channels that are like based on Malazan. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
I mean, it's popular. I mean, it's a lot to cover. So I even have a video. I have like a lore video about a specific character in the series because someone called him a Mary Sue, and I'm like, this guy is not a Mary Sue. He just happens to be incredibly talented, and at no point in the series is he like spirited away it for like no reason, and he just happens to be.
Well, you don't like Spirited Away?
Oh, spirited away is fine. I don't mean he's just taken out of danger right before he dies, kind of thing. He is
Oh.
taken out of danger right before he dies, but there's a reason behind it. It's not like I gotta save this guy with it. He's got to have plot armor. He just happens to be like that good. I break down like mindset. It's all like real life stuff breaking down this character. So like the mindset, the training, the physicality, because he's an assassin, but he's like 6'4" and 245 pounds. He's huge, but he's also just as agile as like these tiny like assassins and stuff. And there's like there's real life instances of that if you look at peak athletes in football or baseball, and it's like I've watched a guy who's 6'2" and 230 pounds do a 5 foot box jump like from just standing, and it's like it's huge. Like that level of athleticism you don't see in anyone but like the 0.1%. And what would stop that 0.1% from existing in a fantasy world? So That's what I was talking about in that video.
I see. I see. I mean, I haven't read out Malazan, so I sometimes feel left out, but I just you know I do what I do.
Yep.
Though I am curious because I know that what's the guy's name, Erickson. I know Erickson will like comment on videos.
He commented on my video about his Star Trek spoof, Willful Child.
Oh, really? That's cool. It must have been fun.
Yeah, I had a lot of theories in there, and he didn't comment on them, which means I was probably wrong, but that's fine. I'm just happy that he saw it. Like, I love that series. I've only read the first one, but yeah, it's a Star Trek spoof, and it is so funny. It's some of the funniest stuff I've ever read.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to read that because I do like Star Trek a lot.
Yeah, he's a huge Star Trek fan. So basically, the premise of it is taking Captain Kirk and putting him on the Next Generation Enterprise, where everyone's all like proper and following like rules and stuff, and then you have this captain who's like rules are meant to be broken, and it's just weird, and it's just so funny. And
Yeah, I
of course,
mean,
he's trying to sleep with everyone on the ship.
yeah. What are you gonna do? Yeah, no. Yeah, no. But a lot of people, like my friend Tig, Matt, my friend Raf Blutaxt. I don't know if you've watched him, but he's a great channel. Who's also in that weird cult space. Um, they're like Malazan. We're gonna just take it all up in there, Malazan. Like they just really like Malazan. I'm like, okay,
Yeah, I mean,
I don't get it.
you'll you'll join eventually,
No,
maybe.
oh, that's the thing. Because I remember once I saw him being all like, "Oh, if someone has a problem, I'll talk with them." I'm like, so if I don't like your book and I make a video about it, and I'll be like, "Hey, would you like to come on my channel and I can interrogate you on why you did these?" Sir, I wonder if he would do it because I know
I don't.
he's.
I mean, he might. That'd be interesting. I mean, as long as it's not like a.
No, I won't be
I guess it.
contentious. I'll be nice to the guy. I'm not an asshole, but
Yeah,
that makes me curious though.
yeah. That would be interesting. Like I mean, I've seen him on a lot of channels. It's always interesting to hear what he has to say. I really liked his interview with Jimmy, and most of that wasn't even about Malazan.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll read Malazan at some point. I don't know when, but it's
I
like
mean, hey, it's
it's
only 13,000 pages.
oh my yeah I know it's oh man
You can buy it on an ebook as like the entire all 10 books as one ebook. And someone was talking about they read it that way. They would just like they would finish a book and it would just be like you're 8% done after
oh my
finishing
god
Gardens of the Moon.
why are fantasy books so big? That's the
I
real
don't
question.
know.
It's all
I
Tolkien's
ask
fault.
myself that all the time, and like I've been a Brandon Sanderson fan since like 2008, and I still wonder why fantasy books are so big. And I've read all of his books like 3 times. I still
It's all
question it.
Tolkien's fault. That's all I gotta say. I'm kidding. He did it in 3 books. Neil Gaiman did American Gods in 1 book. So I mean I don't know. I don't know. You know.
Yeah,
I'm just, you know. Also, I didn't know Canadians could be that dark. Like, goddamn.
I mean, there's also R. Scott Baker. He wrote the Second Apocalypse. I think is the name of the series.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about that series. My friend Epic from Epic Tales really likes that
I started the
series.
first book, and then I just didn't get very far because I was listening to it and my brain was mush that day, so I gave up on it.
I don't know
I'd like
how
to
he
get back
chose.
to
I
it.
don't know how he chose Erickson though. I mean, his name's like Steve London. Well, I guess it doesn't
Yeah,
have a. I guess it doesn't have a nice ring to it. I don't know.
yeah. I think he talked about that in an interview. I can't remember why he did it though. I think he just wanted to do a pseudonym because he had already written literary fiction under his real name. I can't remember why he chose Erickson.
Yeah, like I mean, I've seen photos of him, and he always looks so serious. Like bro, like calm down.
he has some he has some fantastic humor in that series in Lazan. It's like very like British comedy and like Terry Pratchett ish like humor. It's very witty and
That's
kind of
another one I need to
dry.
read. Terry Pratchett. That's one everyone's like, "Oh my god, he's so good," and I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." I'm actually hoping maybe I could read Guards sometime this year. I don't know
I
when,
really want to read Guards.
but like everyone's like, "Yo, Guards are the color of magic," and I'm like, but I've heard people say that sucks. Yeah.
I love the color magic. I didn't know that most people didn't like the first like 8 or so. I've only read the first 8 and I love them. And people are like, "Oh yeah, it gets really good later on. You should read these first." And I'm like, "The first 8 were really good. Like it gets better than this." They're very fun. And the thing is like they're very rewarding the more fantasy you've read. Like you get more out of them because he has like these little inside jokes that you don't notice until like he has Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser in there, except his I can't remember their names. It's like
Heard he has
it's
a
some
apparently, according to my friend Tig, he has a really good Conan XP that apparently is like god tier.
he's Cohen the Barbarian, and he's old and he's still like OP.
Oh no,
Like
I
it's
was talking about
hilarious.
Malazan. Sorry, I didn't know you were still talking
Oh,
about Discord.
oh yeah, Malazan. Yeah, he does. He has like his kind of like his version of Conan, and it's like a so much of what he does in the series is like a deconstruction of the genre, and he does the same thing with the concept of Conan the Barbarian, and it's good. Like that guy is something else. That character in that series.
But yeah, Cohen the Barbarian. I've heard of this guy. Isn't he like a shriveled up old man?
Yeah, but he's still a badass. It's amazing. He ends up using like some of his money to get himself like metal dentures or diamond dentures. Yeah, I think they're diamond. So and so
Diamond
like
dentures.
and watching him like he like bites through like shields and stuff. It's so funny.
Oh man, I'll have to check that out then. But yeah, I've heard like Guards is a good place to start. I don't know. I haven't tried them.
I'm really looking forward to reading that one. I
Maybe
think that'll
next
be
time
the
when I'm
next
on the
one I read.
prowl in on Amazon, I'll nab it.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely want to get to that.
Yeah, no, but I like Neil Gaiman a lot, so I heard him and Neil Gaiman were good friends. So
Yeah. Did they write a book together?
yeah,
Yeah, they
Good
wrote
Omens.
Good Omens. Yeah. I haven't read that. I want to read it. But I just it's just another one of those books on the TBR.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's always expanding, never ends.
Yeah. No. I made a video about every fantasy series I haven't finished, and it was like 42 fantasy series, like sci-fi and fantasy. That was a little overwhelming. I didn't want to do the video initially because I was like, I don't know if I want to know how many series I haven't finished.
Oh, let me tell you, it's a dozen. I mean, there's just some that just the author, like Scott Lynch or George R. R. Martin, just hasn't put out the next book yet. And then there's other ones
Yeah.
I'm fucking lazy, man. Like I can't be bothered to check them out right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I tier listed them, and there were some that were just like, I will never finish these. One of them though was like the Warhammer 40K series. It's like there's 54 of these. I will never finish reading them, and there's no reason
Oh
to read
god,
all
I haven't even
54.
dared step into Warhammer 40k because my god, the lore. Oh,
That's why I
I'm like,
started
dude.
40K with
I'm like,
lore.
dude. I like, look, dude. I'm like on the Star Wars train. Like, I don't know if I can handle another massive mythology.
Oh yeah, it's absurd. Like I remember I used to wake up just reading about the faction for like the army I had painted, and I would like read for about half an hour every morning just the wiki entry for that faction, and I never finished it. I think it would probably be a 200-page book if it was just like printed in a book form. It's absurd the level of like lore and history just for the one faction. So yeah, no. It's an exercise in futility like reading all of them.
Though I've heard, oh god, Gaunt's rifles no,
Gaunt's Ghosts.
Gaunt's
I haven't
Ghosts.
read
I've heard
I
that's
haven't
good.
read those. But I have read the other series from him, which is Eisenhorn, and that series is really good. It's you don't even have to like it. It's a trilogy. I think there's more of them, but I read the trilogy, and it is just really good science fiction that involves he's like an investigator, so it's crime fiction set in Warhammer 40K.
Oh, what? Sci-fi? Crime fiction, you say? Oh, well, I'm
Yeah,
sold. Say no more,
they're
sir.
those are good, but I'm sorry to tell you, they're first person.
I'm fine with, look, I'm fine with first person. It's just in fantasy, it's kind of weird.
Oh, it's just fantasy. Okay, then yeah, you'll like these. So yeah, they're very good.
Like, Great Gatsby's one of my favorite books. That's a first
Oh,
person
okay.
narrative.
Yeah, that's true.
Also, Perks being a wallflower, even though I'm not really a fan of epistolary, and that's in every type of book. I don't know. I just don't like that type of. But it did it well in that book.
Yeah, epistolaries are like beyond starting Dracula once. I don't know if I've ever read another epistolary.
Oh wait, so you read Dracula? What'd you think of that?
No, I started it. That was a long time ago. I plan on reading it again or trying to read it again, but yeah, I haven't gone back to it. I think I read like the first
Dracula. Yeah, no, there's
10% of it or something.
I have actually read the whole thing. Let me tell you, read Frankenstein. That will probably be a better use of your time. I mean,
Okay, I'll do that.
not that Dracula's bad, but there's just a lot of like weird like incel shit in there, like proto incel shit in
Oh,
there. Like
all right.
there's the evil vampire women, and they're evil because they like sex, and it's
Oh, okay.
and Bram Stoker's just like, I'm like, you goofball, you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about.
I do want to read Frankenstein. I just picked up a really cool copy recently, so yeah, I'm looking
Frankenstein
forward
is
to
a
that.
little bloated in parts, but that's just kind of because back in that time they kind of just would go on. Great book though, nonetheless. It's a really good one.
I can't believe she wrote that as a teenager.
I know that's ridiculous. I'm like, oh my god, I have no excuse whatsoever. That's shameful.
Yeah, I tell myself that all the time when it comes to writing. I'm like, okay, yep, I should probably be doing better.
No, but like it's it's one of my yeah, it's a good book. I like Frankenstein a lot.
I'm
Um,
really looking forward to it.
I mean, like I said, not perfect. There's a lot of parts where our titular scientist will just be sitting down and angsting about what he's done without really doing anything, and that's kind of annoying. But that's about it.
Okay.
Now, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, though, it's good shit. I really love
Oh,
that
really?
story. I love that story.
I have only read like the kids abridged version that's like illustrated, I don't know if you've ever seen those, like those old books. It was like they would take classics and they would just abridge the crap out of them and illustrate them for like 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds. I read that one back in like middle school, but I don't remember anything. So it'll be a new book when I finally crack it open.
Oh, it's a great story. I just have personal fondness for that one. But yeah, I think that Frankenstein is very good too. So Dracula, he can read Dracula. He'll have a good time with it. But there's a lot of weird stuff in there. It's also a
I
werewolf, which is kind of cool. Because like the vampire myth is kind of weird because they can't make up their damn mind.
yeah,
Like like he can turn into a wolf, like straight up, and that's pretty cool.
that is cool.
Like, oh, so it's a
I
werewolf novel too.
So there is a Polish folklore that involves werewolves. I
I do
can't remember
love
when it was.
werewolves, so please tell me more about this.
So I'll have to try to find it. I know there's a Wikipedia article about it, but there was a guy who claimed to be a vampire. He was like a Polish lord, or not a vampire, a werewolf. And what he said was him and other werewolves, there was a gateway to hell in the forest, and him and other werewolves would go through the gateway and fight Satan to stop him from like very nice causing mayhem or destroying crops or something. And it was from like the 14 or 1500s, and it was just so bizarre. And I'm like, why has no one written a novel based on this? It sounds incredible. Like,
That actually sounds familiar. I was actually watching like a werewolf history the other day, just like one of those YouTube videos where it's like talking about
yeah,
like where the hell werewolves came from. I heard a similar story like that. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, why the hell haven't people written about this? Like, hold on. There were like a
Yeah.
couple of angles to like I hadn't considered. I'm like, no one's written about this. Like,
Yeah.
guys, material.
Yeah, it'd be so cool.
Or like in the Metamorphosis, Ovid's Metamorphosis. There's like a scene with like it's kind of a werewolf and it's weird. I'm like, why isn't anyone writing about that?
Yeah.
Oh man. So, are there any fantasy like you're really wanting to get to in the future?
Yeah. Let me see. I've got a pile over here. Uh, fantasy. Let me see. I know I want to get to. Oh, Raymond E. Feist, like the magician. I just picked up a really cool copy, and I know nothing about it, and I'm really looking forward to giving it a try. Same with like Janny Wirtz. I
Oh
picked
yeah,
up. She has a standalone
I've heard a lot
that I
about
picked up
Jenny
because I'm
Wirtz.
not. I'm not investing my time into that huge series without knowing how her writing is. So,
I've heard it's really good, like really evocative, and she can play the bagpipes. Apparently, I'm like, that's pretty cool.
oh, that's cool. I've also got like 3 Brandon Sanderson novels I need to read. I haven't read any of his secret projects, but if when I finish those, I'll be back to being able to say I've read everything in the Cosmere. So
Well,
I,
same
I
thing.
feel
How I
obligated.
said earlier that like with Wheel of Time, it just never sounded that interesting. Same thing with Brando Sando, just never grabbed me.
Yeah. Yeah, which is understandable. I mean, not only are his books ginormous, there's a ton of them.
Well, well that and I'm not really like a fan of how he views magic. I mean, it's not bad on
Oh,
paper,
yeah.
but like I don't really like the whole hard soft magic thing.
Yeah. Which, yeah, I understand that too. That was like that was my bread and butter after reading the Wheel of Time series and then finding out he was going to finish the series. So I just started his books and it was just like exactly what I wanted to be reading when I was like 19. So,
Fair enough. Though I'm just not. I don't know. Someday I'll read them because like I feel bad. I would feel like a bad fantasy fan if I didn't read them at all. But same thing with like Wheel of Time. But yeah, I don't know if I'll. I make no promises.
yeah, he has I don't know like his first novel Elantris, I love. A lot of people don't like it, but it is a standalone. So that's nice.
How
And
about
it's
trying
not
Warbreaker or Mistborn maybe?
I love Warbreaker. Warbreaker is pretty divisive, but I love that book.
Apparently Michael Moorcock liked it, so I'm like, all right, that's good enough for me.
Yeah, his review of it, I think, is in this book, Wizardry and Wild Romance, or of Mistborn. I think he reviewed one of those. Yeah, it was either Mistborn or Warbreaker that he like wrote a review for like a newspaper or something. And yeah, Warbreaker's cool. It's very strange and like one of the problems with early Sanderson is what people call the Sanderlanche, where like everything's kind of cruising along and then the action just keeps spiking and spiking and spiking until it's just an avalanche of action at the end of the book. Like the last 20% is like a roller coaster ride.
The Sanderlanche, I like that.
Yeah.
Ah, that's funny. I like that. I like that a lot.
What's great is people were critical of that. And then in one of the Stormlight Archive books, he was basically like, oh, you think I build up to a Sanderlanche? How about you try the last 200 pages of this book or nothing but like edge of your seat action?
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. It's a weird world we live in. That's all I gotta say. And Sanderson, he's just living in it.
Yeah, you know, best-selling Kickstarter ever and all that weird stuff. That was so crazy because I
I
started reading
envy
him
that
so
man's
long
work ethic.
ago.
I'm like, how the hell does he do that? Like,
Yeah,
very
it's just
disciplined, I
so
guess.
yes, it's just so weird because like when I started reading him, he wasn't popular. Like he'd only published like 4 books or something. So like I went to a book signing of his and there were like 50 people there and now they're talking about like his convention is like sold out and who knows how many thousands of people bought tickets to that. So
Oh, my
it's
friend
just
John
so
Minton's going over there, I think.
oh really? I hope he
Mm-hmm.
has fun. because yeah, it's just I always forget how big he is now because I'm just used to him being the smaller writer that I just like read all of his books because he only had 4 out, and then I like obsessed over his podcast about writing and waiting for books to come out. Luckily, he's publishing like 4 a year.
Indeed, you won't get like a George R. R. Martin situation where you have to like wait for 12 years.
Yeah, I read A Song of Ice and Fire in like 2008, and I just binged them all in like a month, and then I was like checking his blog every day, like, oh, is there an update for the book? Is there an update for the next book? And after like 3 years of that, I was like, all right, I guess I'll get to him when he finally releases them. I don't blame him. I think he wrote himself into a corner, so hopefully he can write himself out of it. Because he has other stuff that's great. Like he has this book Fever Dream.
I still
It's
need to read that. The only non Game of Thrones thing I've read from him is Sand Kings, which is fantastic.
I want to read that. I haven't read that. But yeah, I've read Fever Dream, and it's so cool. And I want to read all of his stuff that's not A
And that
Song
is
of Ice and
isn't
Fire.
that his vampire book?
Yes, it's vampires on a steamboat, on a Mississippi steamboat in the 1850s. It's so cool.
Sorry, thought I heard my
Oh, you're
cousins.
good.
But yeah. Oh man, so much stuff going on. So many fantasy novels, so little time. Oh shit. Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
It was my alarm for my medication. But yeah, no, I think I think we've been going on for a while, and I've been enjoying this chat a lot. Um,
Yeah, it's been great.
but I imagine you have other things you want to do this evening, and unless you're getting up again, or do you mind if I share when you get up?
Oh, I don't care. Yeah.
Oh, okay, this man here, this man, this Getty Lee looking man here, Neil Peart guy is like, I get up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Who gets up at 2 o'clock? That's when I go to bed.
Yeah.
I go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning.
It's only 3 days a week, so it's okay. The rest of the time, it's normal.
But anyway, you don't have anything like that going on? Like, you have like any kids or anything like that?
I do have a daughter. My wife and my daughter, I think they're at a friend's house right now. So, unfortunately, well, so my where I'm filming, this is my living room. So I was like, hey, y'all can't have the TV for the evening. So they're like, oh, we'll find something else to do.
Oh, okay. Well, the point I'm trying to make here is I'm sure you have other things you want to get to this evening. So
Yeah.
I'll let you go before we go on for too long.
All right.
But this has been fun.
Yeah, this has been great. I really appreciate it.
Like if I like do like a weird like, I'm hoping to do a Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser discussion. I just need to read them all again. I will keep you in mind.
All
You
right,
and
cool.
Liam
Yeah.
probably. Keep you and Liam on of the whole party. But as I like to do before these are over, if you have any social media or anything like that, feel free to share.
It's just my YouTube channel, Joseph Reads Books. Like I try to put like a minimum of 2 videos out a week. I think I've been averaging 3 videos a week lately. So I've got playlists of like book hauls, playlists of like the just Appendix N stuff I read. I'm trying to like curate it as I go. So anyone that wants to binge something, it's easier because that's what I usually look for on BookTube channels. It's like, oh, you covered something I enjoy. Let's see how much of it you've done. So yeah, that's it for me. Just the
All
channel.
right. Well, I mean, you are in Discord, so there is that. But yeah,
Oh yeah, that's true.
I won't expose you on there. Anyway, again, thanks for giving your time and
Yeah,
being
yeah.
a great
Thanks for
guest.
having me.
We should do this again at some point. Hope you
Oh yeah,
guys enjoyed
definitely.
this because I definitely did. So yeah. And until next time, hope you guys enjoyed this. Yep. And of course, it dies. My fucking mouse. Damn internet.
I'm still a wired mouse till
All
this one
right.
dies on me.
Until next time.